This is the Charter Committee Exploration Committee, Charter Committee Exploration Committee. There's usually only one committee in there. Today we got Jerry Newfarmer and Julie Zimmerman with us. And you all were just, I was pointing to you from Candace and Emily, just about general information about forming a city charter, what all that kind of means, and we really haven't, as a committee, gotten to do too much. So I'm kind of hoping to just use this as maybe a little bit of a Q&A and just general informative session, and see where it goes.
Okay, great.
But maybe you could start a little bit telling us about yourselves.
You go first.
Recorded now, so.
Okay. Well, so as I started to say earlier, Eric, I had done a career as a city manager in 4 different cities, winding up in Cincinnati as city manager. And then I started Management Partners to do consulting with cities and counties, local governments of all types, basically. We were headquartered here in Cincinnati. And over 25 plus years, the company grew in size. We worked with local governments throughout the U.S. And had about 100 people or so. Management Partners was bought by a major accounting firm, Baker Tilly, effective October of last year. And so Julie now works for Baker Tilly because the whole company basically transitioned, and it was they were interested in developing a capacity to serve local government, and I like to think we were the most effective, largest company that was specialized in local government. The thing that has always been unique about Management Partners is that all of our people come from local government one way or another. And so we have a unique perspective about what it's like to serve in local government. And the other thing about local governments, cities and counties in particular, is they're little mini conglomerates and lots of different lines of business. And so having that as an expertise required that as an organization designed to help local government leaders, we needed to have expertise in each of those disciplines. And so we developed that over time and so on. As an organization, we have been our mission was to help local government leaders of all types, elected, appointed, doesn't matter what the role is or what the function is, we have the capacity to help. So we've done everything from governance kinds of issues, including, by the way, the development of a city charter or a new city charter or organizational amendments relative to governance issues, to elected bodies evaluating their appointed staff, or developing strategic plans, or doing long-term financial planning and budgeting, and then of course everything operationally, every kind of function that a city or a county has that can be improved, we know how to do that. So we have ways to do that. So that's basically what Management Partners was about as an organization. And so that's what my background is doing all that.
Great, thanks.
And I was one of the few Management Partners employees without a background in local government. My background is in journalism,
okay.
But I was an opinion writer at the Inquirer, and became really interested in finding solutions, especially to local government problems, when I was on the editorial board. And, we would explore things like shared services and regionalization and all sorts of things. And I would talk to Jerry a lot in that role, and then decided to transition to...
one thing led to another.
So, and I would say that interest I had in finding solutions really led me to appreciate the importance of governance structures for local governments. Like, one of our clients, longtime clients, was the city of San Bernardino in California, which was in bankruptcy. And we helped them come out of bankruptcy. But when you looked at why were they in bankruptcy, it's because their charter was bad, you know?
That was part of it.
Yes, part of it, yeah. But it was fascinating to me because you think of, governance and structures as like kind of, like, oh, well, does it really matter? And it really matters, And so part of the coming out of bankruptcy for San Bernardino was we have to fix, the problems that got us here. And they ended up with Management Partners Assistance, writing a new city charter. And so that's my interest in the charter issue specifically, and a little bit about my background generally.
Great. So I'll say from our standpoint, we created this committee just as an exploration. See if exploring a charter is something that we really wanted to do, and then to learn about the process and potentially get the process going. The reason we started it is, I think, having been on council as long as I have, and started coming up in certain cases where you're coming up against the limitations of a government that's defined by Ohio Revised Code. And as we grow as a city and evolve as a city and mature as a city, is there maybe a better way that we could structure our municipality, the governance of our municipality, to better serve the residents and the interests of the city? And so that was kind of the short version of course, why we're interested in doing this. Any immediate thoughts, Susan, or you want me to just keep going?
Keep going. I think it's a great idea. I think it feels really laborious. Each piece of it, from my understanding, is a lot of time and expense. I'd like to just be on the other side of it, frankly. Want to, wiggle my nose and just make it so. But that's sort of where I am. And some of the other issues that we've been having with everything from, affordable housing and the ways we can use certain things to hiring, all of those are kind of locked. It's like, oh, here's a great idea. Oh, we can't do that because we're statutory.
Right.
So I keep bumping up against those limitations all the time.
Right.
So I'm very excited about it, but not the
Not the hard part.
not the
get there.
work part, right?
Yeah.
So it strikes me as we were talking before we got started, council, we're dealing with 2-year terms here. And it seems like it's a long process, and I kind of question whether council is the right group to try to shepherd it through because of the turnover. Like, if you got it started immediately as a new council swore in, you maybe could get through the process in 2 years.
Why do you see it as a big, hard thing to do?
Just having never done it before and knowing that
Right?
there's a
But
lot
it's
involved with it,
It's just a thing to do.
Yeah.
It's just a thing. Well, the first, and correct me if I'm wrong, which I may well be, but first we have to get it on the ballot, right? And there's a lot of voter education that is required, because I think a lot of people would be worried as to what that
The
would
first thing you have
mean.
to do is to have a draft charter to put on the ballot.
What about?
I thought we had to get it on the ballot and then the draft
I don't
and
know
then
if
the
that's case.
actual.
Julie can research that.
Okay.
Yes.
She's a fantastic researcher.
I think it's, what has to happen first is getting your charter committee set.
Well, there are process questions and there are process choices. A common way to do it is to, as you're saying, is to set up a charter committee composed of citizens from throughout the community and that kind of thing.
Right.
And the case of San Bernardino that Julie cited, it was a committee of about 30 people.
Right.
Now, this is a much larger city, 175,000 population, so a bigger city.
Right.
But they had a committee that was appointed by the mayor and council and charged with go look at the things, at the elements that would be in a charter, develop them, and come back to us with a recommended charter. So the Charter Review Committee actually prepared a draft charter, and they had advice, including assistance from us, but they also had attorneys and stuff like that, and prepared a document which they took back to the council. The council voted to put it on the ballot, and that's how it got on the ballot in that city. Now, I don't know what requirements the Ohio Revised Code would have, and that's
Yeah, I
something
can look
we
into
would,
that.
we could research for you. But,
Yeah.
that's a fairly, now that isn't to say that there aren't a whole lot of issues involved in doing this thing and a lot of political bumps in the road to get from here to there, because there are.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, and building support is,
it's important. Why are we doing this thing? Why are we going to do it? And what difference does it make? And then what is it you're selling? Why are we doing it? I mean, from an inside, in terms of, I think the basic message is just put you in control of your own destiny.
Well, the Norwood has a strong, sense of self.
Oh, for
And
sure.
always has, it
Yes.
we don't want to incorporate with any, we're an
Right.
enclave,
Yeah.
we're completely surrounded. And to me, a charter sort of is, for what we can have, the ultimate in home rule. You really define how you as a community and as a city want to govern yourself.
Right, yeah.
And I think that that's a message that could resonate if delivered well
Definitely.
to the community.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, just more control over your own future.
So, as a organization that advises local leaders, we've done work with a lot of cities in Hamilton County. Most of whom have city charters.
Right.
I'm thinking Montgomery and Blue
Montgomery,
Ash
right.
and places like that. And so I guess in a sense, they're over the hump.
Exactly. So, in your experience, how long does the process typically take from we're going to make a city charter to having a city charter?
I think San Bernardino was about a year.
Wow, that's pretty good.
Oh,
Yeah. About a year.
that's a lot faster than I was.
Yep.
I was anticipating a multi-year.
But
Yeah,
I
but-
think the question here, the threshold question is are there some unique requirements under Ohio law?
Right,
Yeah.
and I believe there are that
Yeah.
make it,
Well,
Drag
we
out.
could actually, we could fool with this.
Yeah.
We could
Yeah.
research it, find out what the requirements are and put it against a calendar and give you a scenario. Or multiple scenarios if they're indicated.
Yeah.
I'm into pro bono stuff these days, so I could do that.
We can do that.
I could do that for you guys.
yeah. Well, that's cool. So another question that I know that we've had as a group is just expense generated with charter. We currently, Norwood is under financial emergency.
Yeah.
We have been for quite some time. I think we're riding the ship. I think, as a matter of fact, I think we're like as close to not being under financial emergency again. But to earmark funds for a project like this it would have to have a lot of buy-in from a city administration
Sure.
level as well. And
Yeah.
so if, because you got consultants that you would probably want to have, you got to have legal representation that you would want helping to build this charter. And all of that takes money. Just curious if there's a thought, we're a city of about 20,000. So what would be in a reasonable amount of expense.
I don't want to give you a number for this reason, that whatever the expense is, it's a one-time expense. And backing up a stage, back to your question about why do it and what are we selling here? One of the threshold questions is, are there economies that you could realize in your ongoing operations if you did it? And if so, what are they? One of the approaches that was taken in San Bernardino with the, now they had political scandal and they were bankrupt, so that was, we got to do something. I mean,
It's
they were,
easier, right? when the-
Actually, your fiscal emergency would count for that, and if you're coming out, well then, God bless, that's fabulous, because you've been in fiscal emergency for more years than any other municipality I've ever heard of, so.
Right.
That by itself would have been reason enough to get control of your own destiny, but if you've already done that, then that goes away. But in any case, what the Charter Review Committee did in San Bernardino was to do a comparative analysis comparing the setup of their government and their services with other good performers in the region, in this case, Southern California. And so we actually did a benchmarking comparison with similar other cities to see how San Bernardino stacked up. And in fact, our team did that. Now, we were paid to do this under the bankruptcy. But the slide presentation that our team presented to the Charter Review Committee actually had 4 slides that said, one of the things wrong is your charter, because they had a city charter, but it had a lot of local permutations that were really weird. And I almost had our team take those slides out, because the whole focus of it was on operational questions. Like, why are you bankrupt? Well, where you're spending money and how could you do it more efficiently? So that was the threshold purpose of the benchmarking thing. But they compared so badly in terms of governance structures that our team that did the slide presentation said, we got to put these slides in about these other cities that are doing it well. What's the difference between their setup and yours in San Bernardino? And so that's what led to the actual doing a new city charter. So it's a good thing I didn't have involvement in that. Because they did the right thing. But a comparative analysis like that is a good way to do it. So you could compare Norwood's finances and spending and operational characteristics with other similar cities that do the same services and see what are the opportunities for improvement. Are there other ways you could save money and and help yourself financially? One of the things that is obvious to me, just knowing how the thing's set up, is that the government is not terribly well integrated. You have no integrated financial management function. I mean, you have an auditor and you have a treasurer who's elected, and then you have a tax operation and so on. But most cities would have a finance department.
Right.
With a professional finance person that does the whole thing and then reports to the city council about how it all works. And here it's kind of chopped up or divided up. Now something like that would come out in a comparative benchmarking project.
Sure.
So.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. I mean, to be honest with you, I personally hadn't thought of it from a financial angle.
Me neither.
So
Well,
that's
Can you give
just
some,
Saving.
a reason to do it as being to improve our,
Getting more efficient, more
Yeah.
streamlining. Actually, streamlining is an old-fashioned word, but it does really apply.
And we look at, use of technology, are you using the best systems? I mean, I do know, as a Norwood landlord, sometimes you walk in to get a building permit and they kind of pull out the big ledger and, If
Yep.
all that
In
were
other places,
just,
it's all electronic, right?
right, if all that, and so, just looking at things like that where you could save money and run, and, ultimately deliver better services to the public. Because if people can pay their water bills online or, things like that, that it just,
How would a charter help with, say, that? And I do know the giant book you're talking about. I think it's kind of fun.
no, it's impressive.
It's very impressive. But what,
I think the biggest thing is integrative, making the operations of the government more integrated than it seems to be the case just looking at it from the outside.
so I agree with the integration. I guess my question is, how does being a charter facilitate the integration?
By helping you to professionalize the government in terms of the structure and the hiring and the people that do it for you.
Gotcha, okay.
I also think the charter helps you, decide like where our priorities, how do we want to run, you can set up the government the way you want it to and figure out operational things. Like, do we want permitting as a part of, planning and development, or what about public services and where do they fit in? I feel like this process helps you kind of analyze and assess the whole government and try to figure out, because there's, like anything else, when things just run the way they always have, you miss chances to make things better.
The other thing though is, and this is the integrative thing that I was talking, I agree with everything
Yeah.
Julie said, is just in the area of strategic planning. How is it what is your strategic plan to make Norwood a better place? Using the government, what are your priorities for doing that? The way, we've done this with the city of Montgomery for 25 years. Every 5 years, the city council sits down and develops a strategic plan. Here's what we're going to do over the next 5 years. And then basically they go do it, and 5 years later they do a new strategic plan and so on. Well, it's the mayor and council sitting down together, working with the professional staff, but it's the council's decision about what are the priorities and what goes into the strategic plan. Well, one of the problems that you have working under the ORC is that you have various of your functions that are controlled by elected officials. And so the council can't tell them, here's the strategic plan for the city of Norwood, because if the city auditor doesn't agree, or the treasurer doesn't agree, or the elected attorney doesn't agree, then you're not in a position to, or the mayor doesn't agree. When we were asked to come visit about this stuff 3 years ago, I think it was, one of the things that we suggested is you ought to have a 10-year financial plan for the city that you could then build your budgets on and that kind of thing. And the mayor was in the meeting, and the mayor said, well, that's a nice idea, but I don't control the budget. And, I have to admit, I sort of did a double take with that. But he said, no, the treasurer does that. We don't do that. Well, in terms of a best practice, that would be a primary policy document that the mayor and council together would annually or biannually, the best practice, do it every 2 years, do a budget and have a 10-year financial plan so that you can, and you're doing that on an integrated basis, and then you couple that with your strategic plan for the city, where you address the issues that are important to Norwood to make it what you want it to be. I mean, that's...
Yeah, actually, now that we're in financial emergency, some of the stuff that we have to do mirrors that. We do have we've got a 5-year plan now.
Oh, good.
That the mayor and auditor and treasurer work on, that council reviews.
Well, you need
approves,
that
and
to get out of fiscal emergency.
We need to get out of fiscal emergency. Of course, our plan is, of course, to keep it going and even improve on it.
But you've had a 5-year plan for some time to get out of fiscal emergency.
Yeah, like at least 5 years.
Right.
But part of that is, honestly, is up to the state.
Another thing, I looked on the city auditor's website this afternoon, And one of the things he touts on his website is that his mission to bring transparency to the public and so on. That website hasn't been updated since 2019. It has a 2019 fiscal emergency plan on it, or maybe it's 2020 or something like that.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you know, finance directors, finance professionals in local governments will tell you, any group of them you get together, they'll say 5 years, that's your long-term financial forecast. And we say nonsense. You know, I've been doing this for 50 years, Eric. 50 years ago, that's what they said. Oh, 5 years, that's as far out as you can go. Well, since then, we've invented computers, and we know how to do it a little bit more sophisticated than we used to. So there are best practice things that you can do to
Yeah, financial
make it better.
modeling and really, you know, like personnel is your biggest expense and, you know, you can build those models out
Of course.
a lot farther than
The
that.
whole thing takes a sales pitch. It needs leadership in the community, and that's where like a charter review committee can come into play. I think elected officials ought to be a part of that and take the lead in it, because you're the leaders of the community. But you think of the neighborhoods and the interest groups in town, you want to have them all in, but then you need one or two people who are the chairs or the vice chair or something like that, who really want to take this group through a process and get it where you need to have it, so that when you've got something to sell, you've got some people that know what they're talking about who can do that.
Right.
I think a first step is we could check ORC and see what the
Yeah,
requirements are.
what the exact process
Put
would
it on the
be.
calendar and see what would be involved
Yeah.
to do that.
Yeah.
That would be super helpful.
How,
Yep.
when you're talking about the Charter Review Committee, made up of elected officials, residents, who else would you consider, like, would business owners be part of that?
Yeah,
Would city
anybody. So
employees?
Yeah, anybody with a, you know,
With
vested
any-
interest in seeing Norwood flourish.
When
Yep.
you think of your political community, all the neighborhoods and the businesses together, I mean, those are the two principal groups. I
Yeah.
guess there's maybe labor or churches or something, faith groups. But who are throughout the community, who are the leaders? And that's the group that, if you can pull together and interest them in doing this.
Participating, yeah.
How many people would you envision being on such a committee?
I would like
Like 5 or like 20?
20. Yeah,
15 would do,
15 would do,
I think.
yeah?
Yeah, 15 to 20.
Uh-huh.
And how many council members?
I would have that be inclusive,
Everybody, okay.
yeah.
Are you, how many council members are there?
7.
Yes.
7, okay. Then 20.
Need to balance that
So
a little bit.
so you would want all council members, all 7? Or just,
Oh, okay, I thought that's what you
Okay.
said, yeah.
I mean, what you need is a selected group of leaders, people who see this as an important undertaking, who are willing to put some time against it and consider the issues, and who will be articulate advocates for whatever results afterwards. That's what you want. And that's not everybody in every group. I mean, that's a selective kind of thing.
Right.
And you'd want it to be very balanced, you know, I think
Yep.
you'd want to anticipate what criticisms
The
will
concerns.
opponents make of this. You don't want it to be too business heavy, but you want some business representation.
Well, and you would want to have, I mean, you guys know the diversity of Norwood better than I do, but there's a lot of old Norwood people who have been, families have been here for years, and there are a lot of new people
Lot
in
of-
Norwood who moved in more recently, so we want to balance that
Right.
as well. I mean, that's kind of what we're saying, is have it be balanced.
Yeah, and
It needs to
have,
be a true representation of the community
Exactly.
as it
Yeah.
exists.
exactly, yeah.
Composed of people who know how to take leadership and willing to stand behind it and influence other people.
Right.
One of the notes that I have on my city charter list is the OCMA that can give, the Ohio County Management Association, that can give up to $2,000 for the campaign. And I think that's where my brain is a little stuck, is the process part of it. And again, my understanding was it had to be on the ballot twice, and maybe that's not accurate. So
Do a little research now.
So,
maybe I could have just Googled it.
so,
So I'm wondering at what point, and I appreciate, I don't want to give a number because,
right,
one, we don't know what that number could be, but also that there would be fiscal payoffs potentially. But one would be, would that money all have to come out of Norwood's budget, or are there additional funding sources that you're aware of?
money for the campaign?
Yes.
For,
for-
to
when I
pay
s-
for legal and,
Right.
and, that kind of
So-
stuff.
For having the community meetings to try to get people in, to explain it, to do, what I heard was, it was recommended to do things like flyers, mailers, signage, so people understand. Because my concern is people will see, oh, Norwood's getting a charter, that the first concern will be, oh, we're going to be sucked into the city of
Spending money.
Cincinnati.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where it's essentially the opposite. No, we're saying, no, this is, we're Norwood strong.
I don't know, so I guess my counsel to you is set that concern aside and focus on how long is it really going to take and what are the steps that make sense, and then come back, circle back to the question. Normally, the answer is this, that the funding of any studies or staff support that's required to support a charter review committee or something like that would be a city expense. Now, how much? It depends on how much activity is involved and so on. If you can detail city staff people to do some of the staff work, that's normally how it's done for like supporting community meetings and things like that. The legal work can be done by your legal staff. Now, you can get outside help on that. Where I thought you were going, Susan, with the question about OCMA, is that ICMA has a fund for professional management, and they will fund, like if you get to an election thing where there's a charter proposal on the ballot, which involves professional management, ICMA will put money into a local committee that's campaigning for it. ICMA won't come campaign, but they have resources that they can support a local committee. The reverse of that is often the case. I know recently there was a proposal to abolish professional management in Austin, Texas. And so there was a committee to oppose, it was a strong mayor proposal. Let's have the mayor be the chief executive instead of a professional manager. And since that was on the ballot, there was a committee to oppose that, and ICMA made a donation to that committee to help them do the campaign, which is flyers and ads, and I mean, a big city like that's a whole different deal. But they do little cities too, so I mean, it's.
So I have some information.
Awesome.
She is very fast at this.
The first step is to have an election to appoint a 15-member charter commission
That's what you're saying.
to draft the charter. So the city council passes an ordinance by a 2/3 vote, triggering the charter commission election by petition. Residents file nominating positions to be on the charter commission. If the majority of electors in the city approve the creation of the charter commission, the 15 candidates with the most votes are elected to the commission.
Oh, my.
Then the Charter Commission has 1 year to draft the charter and schedule a second election, this time for the charter itself. So it could probably be a 2-year process, yeah.
But there's nothing to prevent you from doing a citizen exploratory committee separate from that process.
Right.
I mean, and so that you could
Lay the groundwork
and lay the
before.
groundwork and learn about the reasons why are we doing this thing, yeah. Begin to make the case.
Yep, and then you would hopefully get,
Some of the
15
people
people
from that would
from that interested
be on the-
in, right. But you could, it could be exploratory, we're gonna examine the pros and cons, what's holding us back, a couple of meetings, some testimony. And
Yeah.
then they could even maybe recommend to you, we think that, that we ought to take the next step. And then you guys could pass the, they could.
That helps get the 2/3 vote.
Right.
Create put it on the ballot.
Right, but that's an important step in building buy-in, and getting folks invested in the process. And then it's not just kind of dropped on people, like you've had some time to digest it and start to get the word out.
But so you could, I mean, it's still worthwhile putting it on a calendar.
Yes, I'll do that,
So what you could do is you could do 6 months to do some front-end work with a committee or some involvement like that. And then, at that point is when you take it into the
Yes,
council
to the council
to set
for
up the first vote and blah, blah,
Right,
blah.
and the Charter Commission. And then, and you
Nothing
need to,
important is ever easy.
No, for sure. And then in terms of timing, my assumption would be, well, it would have been awesome if we were, if there's more time in the world. Because we do have a big election coming up in November. It's also the mayoral election, so there'll be more turnout. I can't imagine we could get anything ready for November.
by November.
Because then it would be 2 years, would be off.
I wonder if it would have to wait for a November day, or if it could.
If it was going to be a
In May.
November election, the decision on putting something on that ballot would have to be made probably by early August. Is what I assume. I mean, that's normally like the first week of August is the cutoff for November ballot.
I mean, it could be done, but ooh, that makes me tired.
So the other question is, if you got to have 2 elections, once you've gotten so far as to have a charter prepared, is that election more important to sync with a mayoral election, or is it the first election that's more important?
I would say the second would be
I
the more
would,
important
yeah.
I
one,
would think the second one is more important.
which would be then, I can't do math, 2020.
That would be 4
3,
years out, which
20.
is quite a while.
Yeah. Oh, well.
But
we
then
could
you
do-
have
I mean,
you
but
have
there's
council
presidential
elections.
Council
Oh,
elections
right.
every 2 years.
Yeah.
So-
That's too fast. I mean,
Yeah,
Well, and the presidential election, I mean,
right. If you'd have to coincide with that, you'll have big turnout, whether it's
yeah,
Yeah,
just because of that.
right. Well, I'll do some playing around with the calendar and figure out the milestones and, what the electoral calendar is for the next couple of years and try to compare that to what the timeline in this could be.
Yeah, that'll help you to see that in
That'd be really helpful.
Yeah.
Right, when we talk about doing an exploratory committee, is that something, I mean, you can of course do it officially. Council passes a resolution establishing an exploratory committee with rules on how to be the exploratory committee.
Yeah.
I mean, do you think that would probably be the best way to do it, or do you put out a flyer for a potluck and hopefully interested people show up and want to be an exploratory
No,
committee?
I'd give it some officialdom
Yeah.
thing. Yeah, so I think your idea here is that would be a good way to do it.
the other thing I'm just aware of is, we do have an election and, sadly, you will not be sitting across from me next year, no matter how I beg, plead.
Right.
So what happens if the makeup of council looks very different and the new council is like, meh? I don't think that that's going to be the case, but
Yeah.
one never knows
You never
how
know.
elections go. I wish Mr. Kelch were here. He's, someone who,
Probably one of 10 things that could go wrong.
yeah, right? So that's just sort of one of my other thoughts, maybe concerns, as we, it could be a new council person is willing to
Shepherd it.
really,
Yeah.
this is my passion. I think this is very important. This is not where I'm putting most of my energy.
Sure.
I have some thoughts on who would be really good at it. But if we we have a whole lot of momentum and we get things going, and then it just sort of fizzles, and I guess that's just the risk
I
that one
wonder
takes.
if you get it to a point though where you've put an election of a group on the ballot. Once that group is elected, the charter committee itself.
Yeah.
It's underway.
It's underway,
Yeah.
and, I mean, eventually, I guess they would bring their findings to council, and council would choose to put it on the ballot or not,
But
but,
your worst case, I mean, think of things that could go wrong. I mean,
Right.
the worst case is that people get elected to that group that are against the whole idea, and the reason, that's their platform.
Oh, you
I
gotta
want to get on
stop
that
that
group so I can
trend.
kill it.
That's
I
true.
mean, okay, that's not what you want. I mean, you want to create a positive
Yeah.
momentum. So
Yeah.
if you do a preparatory group, however it's constituted, and get some energy around it, have them put some time against it, and develop some real reasons with some information underlying it, then you've got a group of advocates, so that when it comes time to, I guess people have to run for this, to serve on this in that first election, when it comes time to have people run for that, you've got a group of people naturally who are positioned to do that.
right,
Because they've
They're
put some
already
time
working
against
in it.
and, yeah,
good point.
and if you just do this committee like that, I would speculate that there will be some people who are just, don't want to change anything, that say, I'm going to run for that and I can kill it. Yeah.
I don't know if I have any other, like, super specific questions. I mean, it's been super informative about, like, as we get in, there'll be a lot more questions.
Right, for sure. And at this point, because we don't have quorum, we can't move forward to even
No, we'll have to
consider
have
putting
another,
a resolution together
yeah,
to create the,
yeah.
We could, as we've offered, is to bring back a draft schedule, about how you would sequence these ideas that we've been discussing, and
Right.
just deliver that to you, and if that has value in deciding, in your case, how to take the committee's recommendation forward, then that might be useful.
It would be
I think that'd
very
be
useful.
very useful.
Yeah,
Yeah,
let's start with
we
that.
can do
We
that.
could do it at another meeting and make sure we've got everybody here.
Okay?
So would you think that trying to do something by this November would be appropriate? Or do we stretch it out and try to connect that final vote in the 2025
So it is,
election?
it is now March the 7th. And one of the first questions is, when do you have to make the decision to put something on the ballot for November? And that's something that needs to be checked, but I think that's probably like early August.
Yeah,
And so the question is, and if your committee's report goes to the council to make the decision to create this front-end planning group, or whatever you want to call it, if that goes to the council by the first week of April, then you've got from April till August, that's 3 months. Is that right? 4 months. to do some preparatory stuff, is that enough time? And those are the questions, and I don't know how it's gonna play out at this point, or what the answers to that would be, but we and you would have a sense of that after we figure out the actual dates in the schedule.
Yes, yeah, I think you need to plot all that out, because you'd have to have time for the people who want to run for the commission to file.
Yeah,
Right, to file.
So then,
and you would have had to have time in that 3 or 4 months, whatever it is, for the group to congeal enough and to spend enough time together and do enough research to develop an information base so that people will feel like they've really had a chance to kick the tires and see what's going on. That's a pretty rapid clip. Now, it's doable,
yeah,
but it has to be something that enough people really care about to give it the time to have it happen.
well, and this points out too, that when you're voting on the charter, you'd have to have the charter ready 3 months before the November election.
That's not going to
to-
happen this November.
No, I'm talking about the.
Next one after.
The next one after that. So you've really got 9 months to draft the charter, which to me feels like then,
Oh, you're assuming it gets on the ballot by November the year following, November 24th?
well, once you elect the charter commission, then you only have
Oh,
a
you only
year
have a year.
to
Ah.
get it on the ballot.
Good point.
But then it's 90 days before that you've got to file. So then,
So you've got like
9 months to write a charter. So I'm saying.
You could do that, that's doable.
That it's doable, but investing in that original charter exploration group is going to, like, if they're sort of solidified and they're a good foundation, then it's gonna make that 9-month window easier to do. If you skimp on that step of
Yeah.
the initial charter group, exploration committee, then that's gonna hurt the 9 months, you know?
So it's better to take a little extra time and care on the front end.
Better, yes, to invest the time there to make the back end run faster.
Actually, I don't think the writing of the charter document itself is that complicated. The reality is you can grab model charters from
Sample,
all
yeah.
around here. I mean, the National Civic League actually has a model charter.
And go through that and consider each
Go get
point,
the
like, do
national-
we
they
want
just- They
this?
just updated the model. It's,
I can send you a link to that.
Cool.
so getting a charter and seeing what one looks like and
Yeah.
then thinking about would this work here? I mean, that's the set of questions to be addressed. But the preparation's really important. I mean, getting people to feel comfortable with the idea and to have developed a good information base about why do it.
Have we connected with Deer Park at all? I understand they just recently went through this process.
I have not.
I don't know that their population is, I feel like they're much smaller.
They are smaller,
Like-
I believe. Let's see what they
Ooh,
are.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
Deer Park.
Oh, yeah, much smaller, it's about 5,000.
Oh, you just pulled that right out. 5,354. Wow.
And you
that's-
have to be at least 5,000 to
To be a city.
be a city, yep. Deer Park, yep, November 2022.
They
So
did a
they just
charter
passed
then?
it.
Well, they had changes to their charter,
Oh.
7 changes. I don't know if
Yeah,
it
if you've got one, it's
passed.
easier to change it.
Right, yeah,
That's
start
apparently
from
the new one.
scratch.
I thought there was a new one.
I mean, that's an interesting point about charters too, is you're not necessarily stuck
Oh,
with
no.
your original ideas. If you find that something's working
Sure.
or not working,
You
you
can-
can
yeah.
revise,
Oh, yeah,
which is great for a city that's
My favorite
growing.
example,
Right, right.
Eric, which is not so much, probably not a good example of this, but one of the best practices is for the elected body to be able to have executive sessions for certain kinds of delineated activities. And Cincinnati used to do that all the time. There are 4 permissible activities under the state law, right? And so Cincinnati Council would have an executive session to give their attorney guidance on pending lawsuits and labor relations and stuff like that. And then the Inquirer sued at one point, and the city lost it at the appellate level, and the mayor, who was Charlie Lucan at the time, said, we're not going to appeal that. We're just going to do everything in public. And so for basically the next 20 years, they had no executive sessions, which meant basically the mayor ran things, is kind of what happened. But the city of Montgomery had the same charter language as the city of Cincinnati. And when they saw that the city of Cincinnati lost that lawsuit, they'd been doing it, they said, oh, we should change our charter. So the city council approved an amendment to go on the ballot to change the charter to give themselves permission to do the executive session, like the next 6 months later, and they did it, and the voters voted for it, and that was that, and so life went on without a change. The big city couldn't do that, but.
Right.
Right,
Anyway, it's easy to do it if you have the political will.
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Great.
Anything else?
We're at about an hour, so I think.
Do you want to see if he has any questions?
Oh, do you have any questions? I'm sorry.
Fly on the wall?
Cool. Well, thank you so much.
Sure.
Yeah,
We'll
you're
get you-
welcome.
We'll get you,
Yeah, we'll follow up with,
Okay.
That would be really fantastic.
yeah, just
Yeah.
have an opportunity to go back and do some research
Yeah.
and let you guys know what I find, but
Great.
yeah.
Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome,
It
yeah.
feels like a giant, I'm
Well-
I'm trying to be polite, but where do you start to take a bite at it?
Yes.
So this is very helpful, and these are the first
Yeah,
few steps. Mm-hmm.
kind of envisioning what it would look like and how long it would take and all that. Makes it seem
well, those are the right questions.
a little more realistic, yeah.
Yep.
All
All right,
right,
well, thank you all.
thank
We'll
you.
call this meeting over. Thanks.